The alien Armada unleashed their superweapon, and a single human captain defied it. The first warning came not from sensors nor from scout probes, but from the silence itself, that peculiar absence of radio chatter and background noise that had once filled the edge of the Perseus Reach, a sector of space where traders, smugglers, miners and wanderers always left some whisper in the void. Now there was nothing, and for Captain Elias Mercer of the Terran battleship Resolute, silence meant death. Silence meant an enemy capable of erasing life so thoroughly that even echoes dared not linger, and as the ship's bridge lights flickered against the hard angles of metal bulkheads, the crew realized what the silence concealed, for the alien Armada had come at last, not as rumors of shadow fleets but as a physical storm of warships so vast they blotted out stars, their formation stretching across parsecs like a living wall, and at the center of it glowed their weapon, an artifact so colossal and unnatural that even hardened veterans on Mercer's bridge stopped breathing. For a moment, because this was no cannon or missile array but something older, a lattice of black stone and shimmering light that pulsed with its own gravity well, a weapon spoken of in intercepted transmissions and dismissed by Terran command as myth, yet now it filled every view screen, the alien superweapon, something said to devour suns, and Mercer felt his gut twist at the knowledge that his ship, outnumbered and outgunned, was the only human warship in reach to bear witness, let alone stand in its way, for the fleet was 3 days away at minimum burn and communication relays had been systematically destroyed, leaving Resolute as both scout and shield, though no doctrine ever trained him for this moment, when the survival of Earth's colonies, perhaps Earth itself, rested not in fleets or admirals but in one captain and the 1,000 souls under his command, staring into the void at the weapon that promised extinction, and Mercer, battle-scarred from 20 years of service, yet never shaken, knew he could not run, for behind him lay 3 inhabited systems, fragile chains of life suspended against the abyss, and if he withdrew the alien Armada would unleash its fire unopposed. So he stood, boots rooted against the deck, eyes locked on the impossible structure ahead, while his officers exchanged glances that carried the weight of dread, until he broke the silence with a voice steady enough to mask the storm within. "They've brought their god to our doorstep, and we're the only ones here to say no." And though no cheer rose, though no false bravado filled the air, his words anchored them as they had in battles past, reminding them that humanity did not survive by numbers or technology alone but by defiance, by the refusal to bow even when logic dictated surrender, and in that defiance was something aliens had never fully understood, a spirit Mercer now embodied as he ordered the ship to battle stations, red lights bathing the bridge in a hellish glow. While crew rushed to stations, gunners primed their batteries, engineers rerouted power, and the ship's reactor hummed with a throbbing heartbeat, but even as Resolute prepared, Mercer knew the odds were beyond hopeless, for the Armada numbered in the tens of thousands and their weapon required no fleet to succeed. And yet something in him whispered that running or stalling was worse than death, that humanity's story demanded someone, anyone, stand first against the storm even if history recorded it as the end of a single ship swallowed by the void, and so his mind raced not with despair but with calculation, studying the alien weapon's geometry, its lattice of interlocking rings and pulsing veins of light, searching for rhythm or flaw, because though science teams would one day pore over scans, he had only instinct and war-scarred intuition, the kind born of years making decisions in seconds that determined lives, and as his tactical officer gasped that the weapon's core was drawing energy directly from a captured star, an entire sun dragged in chains of artificial gravity, Mercer's jaw clenched because this was no mere gun but an abomination that feasted on creation itself, and the crew stared, silent as that star convulsed within its prison, its surface flaring unnaturally as it was leached, until the alien weapon exhaled, light gathering into a spear brighter than thought. And Mercer had seconds to act, to move, to decide, as every survival instinct screamed to flee, yet he did not, instead slamming his hand on the comm, his voice steel as he roared across the decks. "Brace for impact. All shields forward, fire everything we have, now." And the Resolute answered, unleashing a fury of rail slugs, plasma torpedoes and missile salvos, weapons meant to cripple cruisers and shatter dreadnoughts, now hurled at the impossible, streaking across void toward the weapon's lattice as if defiance itself could wound a god, and as alarms blared and the alien superweapon's light intensified, Mercer knew this was the opening of a war humanity could not afford to lose, and it began here in silence broken by fire, with one captain daring to defy the impossible. The battle-scarred void of the Perseid expanse still echoed with the aftershocks of the alien Armada's first assault, and though Captain Elias Rain had defied the unimaginable fury of their superweapon once, the truth pressing against his chest was heavier than the artificial gravity that anchored him to the floor of the Resolute, for he knew what he had bought with his defiance was not victory but only a reprieve, a thin sliver of time carved out of a war that stretched across the stars like a noose tightening around Earth's neck. And as his crew worked feverishly to patch the wounds gouged into the ship's hull, recalibrate failing shield systems, and reroute what little energy remained into the pulse drives, Elias stood in the command well, staring into the tactical projection that showed the alien fleet regrouping with unnerving precision, their jagged vessels moving like shards of night through the darkness, their combined signatures burning bright with power that dwarfed humanity's warships. And yet his jaw was set like stone, his eyes burning with the kind of iron resolve that comes only when there is nothing left to lose, for he had not been raised on promises of easy wars or clean victories but on the long history of humanity clawing its way out of hopelessness with fists bloodied and backs bent under burdens that no sane species would dare to endure. The crew's eyes drifted to him in moments of silence, drawn to the quiet intensity of their captain, for they knew he was all that kept despair from claiming them, and though some whispered their doubts in the quiet hours, how could one ship stand against an armada armed with weapons that could tear suns apart? Those doubts evaporated when they met Elias's gaze, for in it burned the defiance of every soldier who had ever fought with broken spears against steel, with raw will against empire, and it was enough to drive them back into their stations, to coax courage out of trembling hands. The alien superweapon had failed to obliterate them, but only because Elias had gambled everything on a desperate maneuver, hurling the Resolute into the weapon's firing path at the precise angle where the rift energy dispersed unevenly, a flaw discovered in a fragment of intelligence smuggled out of alien archives at the cost of 3 recon crews who never returned. And though the ship had been nearly torn apart in the gamble, they had survived while the fleet behind them, smaller Earth ships slower to follow, had been saved from annihilation, and that was why his name already carried through the command nets like a spark igniting tinder, the story of the captain who had stared down apocalypse and lived. But Elias felt no triumph, only the gnawing weight of what would come next, for the aliens had not unleashed their full fury, and he knew with a dreadful certainty that the second strike would not allow for the same gambit. Reports streamed in from the damaged sections of the Resolute, voices tight with fatigue as engineers crawled through smoke-choked corridors to weld ruptured conduits and seal atmosphere leaks, medics working past endurance to stabilize the wounded, and still the ship groaned as though protesting the abuse, every shudder a reminder of how fragile their existence was against the steel tide gathering outside, and Elias could feel the edge of despair pressing against him but pushed it down with the discipline of a soldier who had seen too many battles lost to hesitation. He summoned his lieutenants into the strategy room, the chamber dimly lit by the blue glow of holographic projections, alien ship formations spiraling across the void in chilling symmetry, and with a hand steady though his blood thundered in his ears, he outlined their next move. They could not retreat, not now, for to retreat would be to invite the alien armada deeper into the heart of human colonies, where Earth's defenses were still scrambling to reorganize, so they would do the unthinkable. They would attack. Shock flickered across the faces of his officers, disbelief hanging heavy in the silence until Elias spoke again, his voice low and steady as a vow. If we run, Earth burns. If we fight, maybe she lives. Those words settled into the room like iron, and though fear did not leave them, it was reshaped into resolve, the kind that binds crews to their captain in bonds stronger than blood, and they bent to their stations with grim acceptance. Outside, the alien fleet shifted, preparing another volley, their superweapon charging with a brilliance that painted the void in unnatural light, a wound of reality itself tearing open as energy coalesced. And Elias knew that if they survived the next strike, their only hope would be to take the fight directly to the weapon, to tear its heart out before it fired again, for every instinct screamed that no defense, no trick, no human technology could withstand its wrath twice. He ordered the ship forward, straight into the mouth of annihilation, and though the crew's breaths caught, they obeyed, hands flying across controls, voices firm as they relayed status updates, because this was their captain and his courage was the only shield they had left. The alien weapon flared, an unholy bloom of power arcing across the void, and the Resolute dived into its path once again, shields shuddering, hull screaming as if every atom protested. But this time Elias was not gambling only on mathematics and luck. He was gambling on the stubborn ingenuity of humanity itself, having rerouted the ship's core to unleash a counter-resonance pulse at the precise moment the weapon discharged, and a clash of energies tore the space around them into a maelstrom of fractured light and burning debris, throwing both fleets into chaos, scattering formations as if giants had swept the board. The Resolute emerged battered but alive, its systems sparking, its hull scorched, and in the heart of that storm Elias gave the order that would define them forever: to drive forward, deeper into the alien formation, to cut a path with fire and fury toward the colossal dreadnought that carried the weapon, the heart of the Armada itself. They surged ahead like a lone wolf hurling itself into the throat of a predator, guns blazing, torpedoes firing in desperate arcs, their defiance igniting the battlefield into chaos, and behind them, something unexpected stirred, for the smaller human ships, those saved in the first strike, rallied to the banner of the Resolute, following its impossible charge, their captains inspired by the sight of one vessel defying doom, and soon the void roared with the fire of resistance, a dozen ships. Striking against 1,000, not because they could win but because to surrender was unthinkable. Elias stood unflinching at the center of it all, his voice a steady anchor over the comms, guiding them through the storm, and as the alien dreadnought loomed before them, monstrous and bristling with power, he felt the weight of every life on his shoulders but also the fire of every ancestor who had fought with nothing but grit, and though the odds towered like mountains, he whispered the oath that had carried him through every battle, "Not while I breathe." And with that, the Resolute plunged toward the heart of the alien weapon, carrying the fury and hope of humanity in its battered frame, the fate of Earth hanging on whether one ship, one captain, could defy the infinite might of an empire that had never known fear until now. The bridge of the Resolute Dawn was bathed in crimson emergency light as the vastness of space outside churned with the aftermath of the alien superweapon's collapse, its once devastating sphere of annihilation now flickering and breaking apart like the death throes of a dying star. Yet the victory was not complete, because Captain Elias Monroe knew that destroying the weapon was only the beginning of a greater battle, for the alien armada had regrouped into furious formation, their colossal warships surrounding his lone vessel like predators encircling prey, but instead of despair he felt an unshakable resolve take root in his chest, the same resolve that had carried humanity from fragile colonies to defiant strength among the stars, and as he gripped the arms of his command chair, his voice carried across the tense bridge with the clarity of command and the fire of conviction. "We are not finished, not until every ship in that armada knows the price of challenging Earth." The crew responded with the same ferocity, their exhaustion overridden by adrenaline, engineers rerouting power from broken sections, gunners recalibrating battered weapons, navigators plotting vectors through impossible firing lines, and at the center of it all Elias felt a strange calm settle within him, not the calm of surrender but of a man who has glimpsed the impossible and knows that courage alone can bend the future. The alien fleet surged, their ships shimmering with unnatural energy, their weapons vomiting beams that tore through the void like blazing spears of light, and the Resolute Dawn weaved through the onslaught with impossible grace, its hull scarred and groaning but unbroken, as if the ship itself shared its captain's will to defy fate, retaliating with railgun slugs and plasma barrages that ripped apart the smaller alien vessels with surgical precision, forcing the larger leviathans to hesitate. In that hesitation lay humanity's chance, for Elias realized that the destruction of the superweapon had rattled them, had broken the illusion of their supremacy, and now fear rippled across their lines, fear of a species they had thought weak but had proven indomitable. He activated the fleet-wide communication array, his image projected not only to his own crew but, through hacked alien channels, to every enemy ship in the Armada, and his voice thundered across the stars with words that would echo in history. "You came here believing you could break us, that a single weapon could erase humanity, but you miscalculated, you underestimated the resolve of a species that has clawed its way through darkness and fire, a species that does not bow, and now you face the truth, you cannot destroy what refuses to yield, and as long as one human ship flies, Earth will never fall." His words struck like a blade, and though he could not see their faces, he knew the alien commanders felt the weight of defiance they had never before encountered, their formations faltering, their advance slowing, until their hesitation turned to retreat, one warship after another pulling back from engagement, the mighty Armada unraveling not from superior firepower but from broken will, and Elias knew then that the battle was over, not because the enemy had been annihilated but because they had been made to understand that humanity was not prey, not a lesser race but a force to be reckoned with. The bridge erupted in cheers, tears, and exhausted laughter, but Elias did not celebrate, he simply looked out at the vast battlefield littered with debris and fire, his heart heavy with the cost yet proud of the message carved into eternity, and as the alien fleet withdrew into the abyss, humanity's first great stand against extinction had become legend. Still, he knew it was only the beginning, for the war was not over, but as long as humanity had men and women willing to stand, willing to defy, willing to rise even against impossible odds, there would always be hope, and as the Resolute Dawn turned back toward Earth, battered but unbroken, its captain whispered to himself, "Let them come again, we will be ready." And in that moment the stars themselves seemed to burn brighter, as if acknowledging the truth that a single human captain had reshaped destiny by standing against the infinite, by proving that courage could defy annihilation, and by ensuring that when history remembered the day the alien Armada unleashed their superweapon, it would also remember that it ended in regret.